So today I'm going to be doing a review of the Traska Summiteer. It is the newest, latest, and greatest model from Traska. I originally took a look at their freediver about a year ago when I started this channel, and this is kind of their evolution. This is a more do everything, go everywhere watch versus the last one was a dive watch, and let's take a look at it. As always, there will be timestamps down below if you want to skip to a certain section or you don't want to hear me talk. So let's get into it. We're gonna have a diameter of about 38 millimeters, a very compact lug-to-lug of 46, a height of 10 millimeters, and we have a lug width of 20. So overall, I think we're looking at some pretty good dimensions here. It's nice to see a watch under 40 millimeters. It's nice that they didn't go too long with the lug-to-lug. It is relatively thin for being both a 100-meter watch and just kind of a sporty watch in general. So it is a good size to be seeing. Some other general specifications, we do have the Miyota 9039 beating in the back there. It's kind of like a 9015 beat rate of 28,800 vibrations per hour, 42-hour power reserve. The only difference is actually a little thinner, which definitely helps because it allows this watch to be thinner. And it's nice to see. It wears really nice on the wrist. We have a sapphire crystal with under AR coating, sapphire crystal on the back as well. We have a screw-down crown with 100 meters of water resistance, as I said. This has a proprietary hardening technique that is done to it, which makes it 6 times harder than normal stainless steel and also makes it darker than normal stainless steel and actually darker than a lot of titanium watches out there as well. So that's something to be aware of. BGW9 lume applied everywhere on the dial. That's about it. So moving on to the dial, we have something very simple but very well done. We have the 369 classic Explorer style layout, triangle at 12, and you have stick markers everywhere else. A little railroad track on the outside to add some nice detail. But what you can see is the dial is actually recessed a little bit in the middle portion, and the outer portion of this dial maintains or holds all of the printed information, basically, all the time-telling information, I guess. It has all the indexes, it has all the markers. Now, the middle section, we have obviously the hands and the logos. I like how they kept the text on this dial very, very minimal. They didn't put anything on there. They didn't need, give or take, the automatic text on there. I think it would have looked good without the automatic text, but it's not too much as it is. We have a very nice sword style handset. Which is nice because they didn't go for Mercedes, they didn't go for regular baton. It adds a nice, not only unique character to the watch, but just, it's nice to not see that this is a complete, super homage. It is its own design. It is kind of trying to make it its own while playing on, obviously, the Explorer style, which is very, very popular and very well done. And another thing about these hands, I love the way that they are in length. The hour hand pretty much goes all the way out to the end of this recessed inner portion. The minute hand goes all the way out to this sub-second track. And this second hand goes all the way out to the seconds as well. So hand length is perfect. Detail is there. Dial is simple, but dial is well done. So looking at a closer level here, we can really see that there is a nice texture, a nice detail to that dial there. All the printing is done really well. There's no real misprinting. There's no skewed lines or actual colors that shouldn't be on there. So all that is done really well. As you can see there, all the lume plots are filled in really nicely. Maybe they could have got a little more on the triangle tip on that triangle marker, but nothing really to complain about. Even the hands, lume applied very nicely. Not as fine of an application as I would have loved to see, maybe just a little bit finer so you don't get those kind of like bigger chunks in right there that kind of seem a little empty, but again, still printed well. You can tell there is a little bit of roughness to those hands there, a little bit of imperfection, but this is a $500 watch at retail, so you can't expect the world, especially at such a high scrutiny level. And again, it's just a really simple dial, but the dial is done well. The dial does look good. You get this kind of nice subtle texturing to it, and nothing really to complain about. So moving on to the case of this watch, we are pretty much echoing the dial. It is simply done, but done well. we have, as you can see, a pretty Rolex-inspired case. It's simple. It is a little more sporty leaning, a little thicker leaning in the lugs, but it is done well. As we can see, we do have, which is kind of hard to capture, circular brushing on the lug tops, and again, circular brushing on the bezel, but we have a little bit of high polish reliefs here on the edge of the bezel and a chamfer along the side here on the lug transition. Side of the case brushed horizontally. As you can see, it's kind of like a nice two-piece case with the bezel just plopped on there. Nice sectioning. There is a nice curve down to the general lug shape here. Drilled lug holes, which is awesome to see. I think more brands should be doing this just because it makes strap changing easier, and I don't think it really takes away too much from the aesthetic really. A nice 3-link style bracelet with a female end link, which again, very good decision there. Going to a nice engraved clasp there, double deployant. Perlaged on the inner, it is a, I wouldn't even say it's a nice touch. It's interesting that they did this. I know they do it in their other model, the Freediver. It's cool. It's kind of like a, you know, just now a thing that Traska does, but I maybe would have personally foregone it if maybe it would have dropped the price a little or something like that. But a nice cool detail. I mean, if they pay attention to doing something like this in the clasp, hey, they'll pay attention at the other parts of the watch. Closes very nicely, very securely. Got 4 micro adjust holes, and as you can see, we actually have screw links for the bracelet. And then as you can see there, we have a nice engraved crown with the Traska logo very nicely depicted there. And we got to the display case back there with the semi-custom Traska rotor with the Traska symbol on the rotor. Some nice little striping there, nothing to write home about, but it is nice that it is included. Some general information on the back there, but again, nothing you don't already pretty much know. Now, one thing I will state about the case, it is simple, it is well done, and it is in general nicely wearing and nice to look at. The one thing I will notice, and I don't know if this is because of the coating or because of the process that the watch had to go through, but there is just kind of like a lack of definition in the lug brushing, I would say. At various angles, not only can you not really make out the brushing, but they look very not only curved in a weird way, but also just ill-defined, I guess. It doesn't really take away from the watch too much, but I just think at certain angles it doesn't look super, high-end. I mean, again, it's not a high-end watch, but I think that is an area where they could have done a little bit better. So moving on to how it wears, and I wore today my Sin 556i, and that's basically because they are very similar in their function. They are kind of simple, no-nonsense tool watches, but they can both kind of lean dressy. And the Traska, for basically half the price of the Sin, is kind of a great value proposition, and they are both done well. I mean, the Traska has hardening and the Zin doesn't even have that. So there are areas where the Zin's better or the Traska's better, but you can just kind of see there, very kind of similar aesthetic, and they actually do wear similarly as well. So here we have the Traska sized for my 6.5 inch wrist, and as I think you can tell, it does wear very, very well. The short lug to lug of 46 millimeters really does just sit in the wrist pleasurably. The nice high polish reliefs kind of just jut out at certain angles to you, which is nice because it's not just a no-nonsense, all brushed case. It adds a little bit of just pizzazz in certain areas. And I think you can just kind of tell here what I was saying. The lugs at some angles just kind of look bland. They look a little blown out. They look a little underdone in a way. But very nicely wearing watch. The fact that we have female end links really let the watch taper and wear very well. I didn't mention, but we have a 20 to 16 millimeter taper with this watch bracelet, which is very nice, reminiscent of more vintage styling, very comfortable on the wrist. One thing I will notice is compared to something like the Zin, this is a much lighter bracelet. It does have solid end links. It is well constructed. It is real 316L stainless steel. It is just of a lower heft, lower attention to detail, lower overall beefiness, I would guess. Overall, I think that also does help it in just being a more of an everyday kind of able to be dressed up, because it is light, it is durable, it is scratch resistant, so it can fit all those roles. And as you can really just tell at this angle, it just conforms to the wrist. It is slim at that almost 10 millimeter height, and it really does wear like that. It is super comfortable on straps and bracelets and really anything. It just wears well close to the wrist and does look very nice. So here we have the strap on this very, very nice green Cordura from Vario. And not only does it add to the ruggedness of the watch, it has a nice green coloration, which not only I think brings out the very subtle green that's in the dial, but it also just looks good, I think, honestly. On the wrist, as you can see there, again, some people would be thrown off by that slightly darker gray case. I know I've sold a lot of watches to people, and some people just don't like the look of titanium, and this has the very same look about it. So be aware of that. But again, I do really dig this combo. I think it adds to the military-esque vibe, and yeah, it looks nice. Here we have it on the, I believe it's called the Harris strap from Crown & Buckle, their chevron style strap. This is basically one of my favorite straps ever. It just complements almost every single watch. The single style, the single pass style nature of it makes it very casual, but this nice detailed webbing texture that almost looks like an actual tweed fabric type look just really adds to the watches. And if you see on the wrist, I think that gray just plays with the green beautifully. Kind of complements the gray of the case itself and just looks pretty cool. And here we have it on a nice leather strap. This is the, I believe it's called the Caramel by Bark & Jack. It does add not only a dressier, but even more of a casual, because this is a casual style vintage leather vibe to the whole watch. I think the colors are really complementary, and overall, this watch will be able to be a little bit of a strap monster because of the size, because of the nature of its dressy casual duality, and overall it's a cool one and it wears really well. Now moving on to a little bit of a Lume shot, I'm gonna compare it to my Snoopy as I always do, and let's get into it. A pretty darn good application of BGW9. Is it gonna last forever? No, it's not an amazingly thick application, but it does look pretty nice. Very high legibility among the watch. We even have a nice loomed second hand tip right there for the arrow, which is a nice touch. It is BGW9, so you get this nice, really good color temperature of the blue. And overall, it does look and is applied very well. If we're going to be comparing it to the Timex, as you can see, the color temperatures are about exactly the same. Obviously, the Timex is going to last longer because it's on a battery. But that aside, the Traska did a good job with the application. I would have liked to see it a little bit thicker, just because it would have added not only depth to the dial a little bit, but obviously longer lume. So good job, good lume. And really quickly before I move on to the pros and the cons, just a comparison look at, again, the Zin and the Traska. Now, I'm mainly just showing this to show how dark the Traska is in comparison. It is a little bit darker than the normal kind of warmth and lightness that we usually see in a stainless steel application, but again, you're gonna have to find out whether you'll be okay with that. I find it's not that big of a deal, and honestly, it adds a nice little variety to the watch box, and if you get a black dial or the blue dial, I don't think it would stand out as much as with this light green dial here. So pros and cons of this watch. I think one of the biggest pros is that yes, it is a homage, but it kind of is its own. It is in a size that Rolex has never done. It is a little more modern than a 1016, but not quite as modern and beefy looking as the newest models. It is still a flat printed dial. It takes a lot of, inspiration from that 1016 lineage. And this one is nice because it has those sword hands. It has that recessed dial portion. It has the funky colors that you would never see Rolex ever do. So it is nice to see that someone's taken this design and has gone the extra step of making it their own versus just using it as is. Other than that, it is a really well-made watch. The bracelet closes nicely. It's nice that it comes on a very well-made bracelet with screw links. The dial is very nicely done. That with that again, that recessed portion, the overall Lume application, everything is pretty well done on this watch, and it's nice to get that extra hardened coating because it just helps with the everyday scratches that normally would kind of mark up your watch, but now will do less of marking up your watch. Overall, it's simple. It is a no date watch, which I love that they did a no date. It is a no nonsense. It is thin. It is just what it is, you know. It's three-hander, time-only watch, and there aren't a ton of those on the market. And it's nice when you see one come about. It's done in the right size. It has some nice colors, and it is a good design. Moving on to the cons of this watch, there aren't a lot, but of course there are going to be cons. One of the biggest cons I find people will see is the fact that it's too simple. It is a flat dial. There are literally no applied elements. It adds some dimensionality with the recessment of the middle portion, but I mean, it would have been nice to see them apply Lume a little thicker just to add a nice little bubbly quality to it. But even then, it is not made to be an overly flashy watch. It's made to be kind of a no-nonsense tool watch that can live in that slightly dressier category if it needs to. It is executed well, and overall, if you're buying this watch, you're buying it because it is simple, but it is well done. The other bigger cons, I feel like, to most people will be the hardening treatment that was used. Not for the fact that now it's hardened and it can take more scratches. I think people would love that. But the fact that it darkens the metal itself. Some people just don't like what they're not used to. And I think if you do give this a shot, it is nice. It's a nice change of pace in the coloration of a watch box. It also is not too different. You know, it is a slightly darker gray. It adds more of a tool, no nonsense look to it overall, where more brushed, very stainless steel, light silver cases can even look a little more dressy. But again, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it is just something you should be aware of, and it may be a make it or break it point for you. And lastly, kind of minor thing is that basically the lugs, because they are short, they do wear well, but because they are short, sometimes if you have a too thick of a strap end, it will rub against the case. So for some straps, you just won't be able to put it on this watch because over time it's just gonna wear away at the end of the strap and not look too pretty in my opinion. So it's not like that with all straps. As you saw earlier, I was able to use the Bargain Jack strap just fine, but it is something to be aware of and something you might want to consider. But you have the bracelet and you have one pieces, so I don't think that would be too much of trouble. Overall, for $500, this is, no doubts about it, a great watch. It fits well, it's a great size, it comes in a lot of fun colors. The only thing I will note is that I have a white seconds hand on my model because I kickstarted it, or I was a supporter on Kickstarter when it came out. Now I sent an email to Traska and they haven't gotten back to me about whether you can change the color of the hands from now on, but I'm just going to assume no. And now the green model comes with an orange one, the black model comes with a red hand, and the blue model comes with a white hand. And that's why if you get one, I kind of would recommend the blue model, especially if you don't have that many blues. I think it is a very classy color. I think it adds to the dressier nature of this watch. I went with green because I love green and it is a nice change of pace from the colors I already have in my watch box. But I think the blue one would be my pick. They're great everyday watches. They'll do everything, go everywhere, 100 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, looks good, fits good, simple, classy. I mean, you can't really go wrong. If you're thinking about the watch, you won't be disappointed. Is it the most amazing watch for the money? If you're into like glitz and glamour and applied indices, no. But it is an amazing watch and I think you'll be happy with it. So, thanks for watching.